Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to English Avenue, where we teach English through powerful, engaging stories. Today, we begin a thrilling, dramatic, and mind-blowing story about one of the most powerful and scandalous women in history, Catherine the Great. This is not just a story. This is a journey into the world of love, betrayal, ambition, power, and luxury. Who was Catherine the Great? A woman who overthrew her own husband to become Empress of Russia. A queen with many lovers, young, powerful, and handsome men. A ruler who expanded Russia and made it a world power. A woman surrounded by rumors, scandals, and shocking secrets. We will slowly and deeply explore every single detail of her life. Her childhood, marriage, secret affairs, power struggles, luxury, betrayals, and even her most scandalous rumors. So if you are learning English, this is the best way to improve your skills by enjoying an incredible real-life story. The beginning of a future queen. Before she became Catherine the Great, she was just a little girl named Sophia Augusta Frederica. Born May 2nd, 1729. Birthplace Stettin, Prussia, now Szczecin, Poland. Father, Prince Christian August, a strict and serious man. Mother, Princess Johanna, an ambitious woman who wanted power. Little Sophia was not born a princess of Russia. She was just a small, noble girl from a tiny German state. Her family was not very rich or powerful, but her mother had big dreams. She wanted her daughter to marry into a royal family. Interesting fact. In those days, royal families married each other to stay powerful. They didn't marry for love. They married for power, money, and politics. Sophia was not an ordinary girl. She was very intelligent. She loved books more than dolls. She spoke many languages, German, French, and later Russian. She was very ambitious. Even as a child, she wanted to be important. She didn't want to just be a wife. She wanted to be a ruler, a queen, a leader. But in those days, women were not supposed to have power. They were expected to marry, have children, and obey their husbands. Sophia, however, had different plans. One day, her mother received exciting news. The Russian Empress Elizabeth was looking for a wife for her nephew, Grand Duke Peter of Russia. Who was Peter? He was the next in line to be Emperor of Russia. He was a German prince, just like Sophia. He was Elizabeth's nephew, but she didn't have children, so he was chosen to be the next ruler. Sophia's mother saw this as a golden opportunity. If Sophia married Peter, she would become Empress of Russia one day. Her family would gain power and fame. It was the chance of a lifetime. But there was one problem. Sophia had never even met Peter before. Would she like him? Would he like her? What kind of man was he? Little did Sophia know this marriage would change her life forever. At the age of 14, Sophia left her home in Germany and traveled to Russia. The journey was long, cold, and difficult. It took weeks to reach the Russian capital, St. Petersburg. When she arrived, she was shocked. Russia was huge. The palaces were golden and massive. The Russian people had strange customs, clothes, and language. She had to quickly learn Russian, adapt to Russian culture, and most importantly, impress the powerful Empress Elizabeth. Would she succeed, or would she fail? And most importantly, what was her future husband, Peter, like? Finally, Sophia met her future husband, Grand Duke Peter. She was shocked and disappointed. Peter was not a strong, handsome prince. He was childish, immature, and foolish. He loved playing with toy soldiers more than talking to her. He didn't care about ruling Russia. He just wanted to have fun. Sophia immediately realized, I cannot trust this man. If he becomes emperor, Russia will be in danger. I must become strong, or my life will be ruined. But she was only 14 years old. She had no power yet. She had to play smart and wait. Her marriage was coming soon, and she had to prepare for a life full of secrets, power struggles, and betrayal. She was now living in one of the most powerful countries in the world, Russia. Her mother, Princess Johanna, was excited and ambitious. She wanted her daughter to marry Peter and become empress. But Sophia felt worried and alone in this new country. Everything was different in Russia: the language, the people, the food, the culture. But she had no choice. She had to adapt, survive, and succeed. This was just the beginning of her long journey to power. Life in Russia, a strange new world. When Sophia arrived in Russia, she was shocked by the grand beauty of the capital, St. Petersburg. The palaces were huge and golden. The people wore thick, heavy fur coats to protect themselves from the freezing cold. Everything was luxurious, rich, and completely different from her small home in Germany. But Sophia quickly realized something important. This was not just a beautiful place. This was a place full of danger, secrets, and power struggles. She understood one thing very clearly. If I want to survive in Russia, I must be strong. I must learn. I must become smarter than everyone else. And so, she began her transformation. Meeting Empress Elizabeth, the most powerful woman in Russia. The woman who ruled Russia at that time was Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter the Great. Elizabeth was strong, intelligent, and full of energy. She had no children, so she wanted to make sure her nephew, Grand Duke Peter, would marry a good wife. That's why she chose Sophia. When Sophia first met the Empress, she felt nervous but determined. She bowed respectfully and spoke politely. She knew she had to impress Elizabeth, and she did. The Empress liked Sophia immediately. She saw that this young girl was intelligent, well-mannered, and eager to learn. But there was one condition. Sophia had to convert to the Russian Orthodox religion. In those days, a foreign princess who married into the Russian royal family had to change her name and religion. So, Sophia was baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church. She was no longer Sophia. She was now called Catherine Alexeyevna. This was a huge moment in her life. She had taken her first step toward becoming the future empress. But she knew that a new name was not enough. She had to become Russian in every way. Catherine was determined to learn the Russian language. At first, it was very difficult. Russian was nothing like German or French. The words were hard to pronounce and the grammar was complicated. But she did not give up. She practiced day and night. She read Russian books, spoke with Russian servants, and even secretly prayed in Russian at night. She wanted to prove to the Empress and the Russian people that she was not just a foreign princess. She was one of them. And slowly, she succeeded. The people in the palace began to admire her dedication. Even the Empress noticed that Catherine was working hard to fit in. This was an important lesson for Catherine. If you want power, you must earn the people's respect. But while she was becoming stronger, her future husband Peter was becoming weaker. Catherine was now engaged to Grand Duke Peter, the man who would one day become emperor. But there was a big problem. Peter was not a strong, intelligent, or serious man. Instead of preparing to rule a great empire like Russia, he spent his time playing with toy soldiers. Catherine watched him closely and realized, this man is not a leader. If he becomes emperor, Russia will be weak. Someone else must take control. and in her heart she knew that person had to be her. She did not love Peter. She did not respect him, but she had to marry him. It was her only way to the throne. So she made a secret decision. She would marry Peter, but she would never let him control her. She would find a way to take power for herself. This was the beginning of her secret plan. In 1745, when Catherine was 16 years old, she married Peter. It was a grand royal wedding. There was a huge celebration with fireworks, music, and feasts. But Catherine was not happy. There were even rumors that their marriage was never physically complete. Some said Peter was unable to be a proper husband. Catherine felt lonely and frustrated. She had dreamed of a life full of excitement and importance, but now she was trapped in a loveless, unhappy marriage. She needed something more. She needed love. She needed passion. She needed a man who could understand her desires and ambitions. And soon, she would find one. Catherine's first love affair. In the royal court, there were many handsome, powerful men. Catherine was young, beautiful, and full of energy. She wanted attention, excitement, and romance. And then she met Sergei Saltykov, a charming and handsome Russian officer. He was everything Peter was not: strong, confident, and passionate. At first they were just friends, but soon their friendship turned into something much more. Catherine was still married to Peter, but she had secret meetings with Sergei. He made her feel alive, loved, and powerful. This was her first affair, but it would not be her last. Over the years, she would have many lovers: handsome generals, powerful politicians, and ambitious young men. Each affair would help her gain power and control. She was no longer a lonely girl from Germany. She was becoming a true Russian empress, clever, strategic, and dangerous. But a biggest challenge was still ahead. Peter was next in line to become emperor. Catherine knew that if he became ruler, her life could be destroyed. She had to find a way to stop him. And that meant only one thing: she had to take the throne for herself. Catherine was no longer the innocent girl from Germany. She had lived in Russia for many years, and she had learned the secrets of survival, power, and manipulation. She had to act fast. She had to find a way to take power before it was too late. This was the most dangerous time of her life. She was about to make a move that would change history forever. In 1762, Catherine's worst fear came true. Empress Elizabeth died, and Peter became Emperor Peter III. Now, he had full power over Russia, but instead of making the country stronger, he made mistake after mistake. He admired Prussia, Russia's enemy, and even made peace with them. The Russian army hated him for this. He ignored Russian traditions and tried to change the way people dressed and behaved. He insulted the powerful Russian Orthodox Church, which made many religious leaders turn against him. He disrespected Catherine publicly, humiliating her and treating her like she was nothing. Peter thought he was clever and powerful, but in reality he was creating enemies everywhere. Catherine watched and waited. She knew that the time was coming, the time for her to take the throne, but she could not do it alone. She needed strong allies, and she needed them fast. The secret plan. Catherine was not just beautiful and intelligent, she was strategic. She knew that if she wanted to remove Peter from power, she needed the support of the Russian army. The soldiers had to fight for her, not Peter. The nobles, the rich and powerful men, had to believe that Catherine would be a better ruler. The Russian church. She had to convince the religious leaders to support her, not Peter. So she started working in secret. She sent messages to important generals in the army. She made promises to powerful noble families. She spoke to the church leaders in private meetings. And slowly, she built a network of support. But she also needed something personal, something that would give her power over Peter. She needed love. Grigory Orlov, the man who would change everything. Catherine had many lovers in her life, but Grigory Orlov was one of the most important. He was strong, handsome, and a military officer. More importantly, he was loyal to Catherine. They were deeply involved in a passionate love affair, but Catherine did not love him only for romance. She needed him for her plan. Orlov was well connected with the Russian army, and many soldiers respected him. Through Orlov, Catherine was able to gain the loyalty of many powerful military men. Now, she had the army, the nobles, and the church on her side. The moment had arrived. It was time for action. It was June 28, 1762. Catherine had prepared everything in secret. She put on a military uniform, mounted a white horse, and rode to the barracks where the Russian soldiers were waiting. She stood tall and confident as she addressed the troops. "My friends, my brave soldiers, Russia is in danger. The emperor is weak, and he is destroying our great country. Will you fight for me? Will you fight for Russia?" The soldiers cheered loudly. "Long live Empress Catherine!" they shouted. At that moment, Catherine knew she had won. She marched with her army into St. Petersburg, and without much resistance, she took the throne. Peter, shocked and afraid, tried to escape, but it was too late. He was captured and forced to sign a document saying that he was no longer emperor. Catherine was now Catherine II, the sole ruler of Russia. But there was still one last problem. Peter was alive. A few days later, Peter was dead. How did he die? No one knows for sure. Some say he was strangled in prison. Others say he was poisoned. Some believe he simply died of illness. But one thing was clear. Catherine was now the undisputed ruler of Russia. With Peter gone, she could now rule freely. And she would rule with more intelligence, strength, and ambition than any ruler before her. The rise of Catherine the Great. Catherine was now Empress of Russia, but her work was just beginning. She wanted to make Russia stronger, richer, and more powerful than ever before. She would expand Russia's empire, conquering new lands, modernize the country, bringing art, education, and science to Russia, strengthen the economy, making Russia a rich and powerful nation, encourage culture and philosophy, bringing in ideas from France and Europe. But she would also face challenges, rebellions, betrayals, and wars. And of course, she would have many more love affairs, some that helped her and some that nearly destroyed her. Catherine was now the most powerful person in Russia. She had taken the throne with intelligence, planning, and courage. But taking power was one thing, keeping it was another. She had enemies everywhere, nobles who did not trust her, people who still supported Peter, and foreign rulers who wanted to see her fail. But Catherine was not just a queen. She was a visionary, a strategist, and a ruler who understood people better than anyone. Now it was time for her to prove that she was not just a woman who had taken the throne. She was Catherine the Great. This was her era, her rule, and her destiny. From the moment she became empress, Catherine had big dreams for Russia. She did not just want to sit on the throne and enjoy her power. She wanted to change Russia, improve it, modernize it, and make it the greatest empire in the world. She had studied the philosophers of Europe, men like Voltaire and Montesquieu, who wrote about freedom, justice, and progress. Catherine wanted to bring these ideas to Russia, but she knew she had to be careful. The nobles did not want change. The army did not want change. The church did not want change. If she moved too fast, they could turn against her. So she had to be smart. She had to make changes step by step without losing support. And that is exactly what she did. Catherine started making changes immediately. She improved education. She believed that a strong empire needed educated people. She built new schools, universities, and libraries. She made sure that girls could go to school too, which was very rare at the time. She modernized the government. Russia was a huge empire, and the old way of ruling was slow and inefficient. Catherine created new laws, better administration, and more organized leadership. She encouraged science and the arts. Catherine loved art, music, and literature. She invited famous artists, musicians, and scientists from Europe to come to Russia and teach Russians about the latest ideas. She improved the economy. Catherine supported trade, business, and industry. She built new roads, bridges, and cities to make Russia richer and more powerful. These changes made Catherine very popular among intellectuals and progressive thinkers. But not everyone was happy. The nobles and the church were worried. They thought Catherine was bringing too much Western influence into Russia. They did not say anything yet, but some of them were waiting for a chance to remove her. And Catherine knew that. So she needed to make sure that her power was protected. Catherine was not just a ruler, she was also a woman. And like all powerful rulers, she understood that love and relationships could be used as a tool for power. Throughout her life, Catherine had many lovers, but they were not just romantic partners. Each of these men played an important role in her empire. Some helped her politically, some gave her military support, and some simply made her feel alive and happy. Here are some of her most important lovers. 1. Grigory Orlov. He helped Catherine take power from Peter. He was strong and loyal, but over time, Catherine lost interest in him. 2. Stanislaw Poniatowski. He was a Polish noble and one of Catherine's first great loves. She helped him become King of Poland, but later she had to remove him from power because he was weak. 3. Grigory Potemkin, perhaps the greatest love of her life. He was a military genius, a brilliant politician, and Catherine's closest advisor. Some believe they even had a secret marriage. 4. Alexander Lanskoy, Platon Zubov, and many others. As Catherine got older, she continued to have young lovers, often choosing handsome and intelligent men who could entertain and support her. But unlike other rulers, Catherine did not let love control her. She was always in charge. She chose her lovers, and when she no longer needed them, she moved on. She never let her heart weaken her rule. Catherine was not just a reformer, she was also a conqueror. She wanted Russia to be stronger and bigger, and she spent most of her life expanding the empire. Under her rule, Russia grew larger than ever before. She conquered Crimea. This gave Russia access to the Black Sea, which was important for trade and the navy. She took land from Poland. Poland was weak, and Catherine worked with other European powers to divide Poland and take large parts of its land. She fought against the Ottoman Empire. Russia and the Ottomans were enemies for centuries, and under Catherine, Russia won several wars and took important territories. By the end of her reign, Russia had become one of the most powerful empires in the world. Catherine had achieved what no other Russian ruler had ever done. But her success also created enemies. And soon, she would face one of the biggest challenges of her life. Not everyone in Russia was happy with Catherine. The peasants, who were poor and had very hard lives, began to rise against her. A man named Emelian Pugachev, a former soldier, pretended to be Peter III, Catherine's dead husband, and started a rebellion against her. He told the people, "Catherine is a foreigner. She is not Russian. She took the throne unfairly. Follow me, and I will give you freedom." Thousands of people joined him. They started burning cities, killing nobles, and fighting Catherine's army. For a moment, it looked like Catherine might lose her throne, but she acted quickly and decisively. She sent her best generals and soldiers to crush the rebellion. After months of brutal fighting, Pugachev was captured and executed. Catherine had won again. But this rebellion taught her an important lesson. She had to keep control over the people and make sure that no one else could challenge her rule. Catherine had ruled Russia for more than 3 decades. She had transformed the country, made it stronger, and expanded its territory. She had won wars, built cities, and created schools. She had been a queen, a reformer, and a strategist. She had outsmarted her enemies, loved powerful men, and controlled an empire larger than any other woman in history. But even the greatest rulers do not live forever. Catherine's later years. As Catherine grew older, she became even more powerful. Most rulers slow down in their later years, but not Catherine. She worked harder than ever. She continued expanding Russia's borders. She continued modernizing the country. She continued leading with intelligence and strategy. She spent hours reading, writing letters, meeting advisors, and making decisions. She also never stopped enjoying life. She loved art, music, books, and conversation. She surrounded herself with intelligent and talented people. She still had young lovers, but now they were mostly companions rather than political partners. But even as she enjoyed her power, she knew something was missing. Catherine the Great had 3 known children: Paul I, her heir; Alexei Babrinsky, her son with Grigory Orlov; and possibly Elizabeth Temkina, rumored daughter with Potemkin. Paul was the most important, but had a troubled relationship with her. Catherine the Great was married to Peter III, but their marriage was cold and distant. They had no real love for each other, and many believe they never had a physical relationship. But in 1754, Catherine gave birth to a son, Paul. This raised big questions. Was Paul really Peter III's son, or was his real father someone else? Many people, including Catherine herself in her letters, hinted that Paul's real father might have been Sergei Saltykov, a Russian nobleman and one of her early lovers. But no matter who his biological father was, Paul was officially recognized as the son of Peter III. This meant he was the rightful heir to the Russian throne. If there was one thing Catherine truly regretted, it was her relationship with her son, Paul. Paul was her only legitimate son. He was supposed to be the next emperor of Russia, but Catherine never trusted him. She thought he was too weak, too emotional, and too difficult. She kept him away from power and refused to let him have any real political influence. Paul hated his mother for this. He believed that she had stolen the throne from his father, Peter III. He waited for the day when he could take power and undo everything she had built. Catherine thought about replacing him as her heir. She wanted her grandson, Alexander, to be the next emperor instead. But before she could make that official, something happened that no one expected. On November 16th, 1796, Catherine woke up early as usual. She planned to spend the day working on government documents. She had a busy schedule, just like any other day. But then, something happened. As she was walking to the bathroom, she suddenly collapsed. Her servants found her lying on the floor, unable to move or speak. They immediately called for doctors and priests. Catherine was still alive, but barely. For the next 24 hours, she remained unconscious. People whispered in the palace, "Is the Empress dying?" Her enemies waited for the moment when she would finally be gone. Her supporters prayed that she would wake up, but she never did. On November 17th, 1796, at the age of 67, Catherine the Great passed away. The moment Catherine died, her son Paul became emperor, and the first thing he did was destroy everything she had worked for. Paul hated his mother. He believed she had stolen his birthright and humiliated him his whole life. So, as soon as he became ruler, he changed many of Catherine's policies. He tried to erase her legacy. He punished her allies, removed her reforms, and made new laws that went against everything she believed in. But Paul's rule did not last long. Many people hated him, and just 5 years later, he was assassinated. His son, Alexander I, took the throne and brought back Catherine's ideas. Catherine's dream of a powerful modern Russia was too strong to destroy. Even after her death, her influence remained. Catherine ruled Russia for 34 years. She was one of the longest ruling female leaders in history. She changed Russia forever. Even today, people still remember her as one of the greatest rulers of all time. Here's why. She expanded Russia's borders. She added new lands, making Russia one of the biggest empires in the world. She modernized the country. She introduced education, science, and Western ideas to Russia. She improved women's rights. She was one of the first rulers to promote education for women. She was a master of power. She took the throne in a male-dominated world and ruled with strength and intelligence. She left behind a legend. Catherine's story is one of ambition, love, power, and brilliance. Many rulers have come and gone,